there are relationships built between the police and the citizens that are defined by mutual respect.
That's right.
Mutual respect, first and foremost. And so once you have that establishment of respect, then you can have people who have open lines of communication. But you don't want to communicate with anyone who doesn't respect you, first and foremost. So I don't want to go too deep into it, because those first two things are so far away. If we can have mutual respect, then we'll have a big push towards community policing.
So to build on that question, are there any models in the U.S. where you believe community policing is done well or done significantly better, or internationally from your UN colleagues?
Like this.
When it comes to policing, the United States is very unique in its model. Most other countries actually have state police. They don't have, these type of police departments that we actually have. So when you start looking at international models, one of the things that I would definitely say that we can take from international models with having a state police model is that they actually recognize the humanity in the people that they are charged to serve and to protect. This is one thing that we actually lack in the United States, which is a byproduct of actually having hotspot and militarized policing, is that you do not see an individual, you do not see a human being, you see a target. And what we have also come to realize is that you see money, for municipalities.
Right.
So, those are the differences in mind.
This is a notion of municipalities preying on residents with traffic fines.
Preying on black people.
Correct.
Preying on black people. Correct.
And in particular, and make this for the record, it's already well known, in particular, poor black people.
That's right.
So when we look at the further maligning and disenfranchising and the inhumane treatment of individuals for the lack of seeing their humanity and their station and their agency, these are the issues that we have.
Right on.
Good evening, and thank you so much for speaking to us tonight. I want to say back to you what I think I heard. I'm trying to take lots of notes, and I know everyone wants action, so I want to make sure I wrote down the action steps. More community policing, stop the hotspot policing, address tear gas, and profiling. I think you said something else. I just want to make sure that I've written down the things that you really think we need to address.
Yes, and I would just like to correct the first point. We do not currently have a community policing model.
Yeah, we need to start. Community policing, stop hotspotting.
Yes. Yeah. And then, give me your second point.
Address tear gas, end profiling, and brutality.
Okay. Right. Yes. And then the last part, since Chief Dotson has pretty much displayed to us since August that he has an inability to be honest with his citizenry, he is now putting in danger men and women in uniform and those associated with that uniform, and also the citizenry with his dishonesty. What will be the action taken against him for his repeated offenses?
Just a quick add-on. To provide an answer for that, somebody needs to lose their job. Because the difference between all of these ideas being aspirational and these ideas actually taking place is accountability. And so when people don't follow through on the ideas and the expectations we have for them for their office, they have to be held accountable. Inspiring means people have to to be fined, fired, indicted, whatever it takes to hold them accountable for their behavior. So currently we see our system of laws, as a law professor, I'm concerned about these laws. Our excessive force laws are way too permissive when it comes to the police's ability to use excessive force. There are many people who think our excessive force laws here in the United States are here in Missouri are unconstitutional. And so if you put it up against the standard of human rights, which is even more righteous, these excessive use of force laws here are almost barbaric. I'll use the word barbaric. So the interesting thing here is that in the city, we can pass local ordinances to change our excessive use of force standards without having to go all the way to Jeff City or going all the way to the Supreme Court. So that's something we can do in the short term to change the standards. And then when people violate those standards, we have to have the political will to have indictments, investigations, trials.
Before coming onto the force, then I also heard a comment over here about making applicants actually engage in implicit racial bias testing before they're selected. Are there any other recommendations that you have or knowledge that you have about suggestions for hiring practices such that you would be bringing in people who might already be oriented toward the system of community policing you're talking about?
Shut it down.
First and foremost, psychological training. Because a lot of that training only happens upon entry. And then when a police officer commits a crime, do they go through more psychological evaluation? So just how people have random, drug tests at their job, how come we do not randomly psychologically evaluate our police officers?
They're good liars. They're good liars.
And also,
They're good liars.
yeah, and then also, when we look at the psychological testing, because the issue around diversity, right, is that one would assume that if you have a black officer patrolling a black neighborhood, that somehow, some way that person would not harm, because we have to bring it back a bit. Murder is the most extreme that we're looking at, which we're dealing with in the city. We're not looking at the psychological, emotional, and spiritual effects of harassment, daily harassment, from stop and frisk that our young people are dealing with. And if a police officer continues to have infractions against, harassing individuals in their community, which has now been rooted to the psychological and emotional harm of those community members, what will be done to that police officer? Because sadly enough, the same people that create those acts have the same skin color as the people that they patrol. So when we start looking at people who are qualified, not only do we have to deal with implicit bias, we have to deal with the ugly thing of intra-race bigotry. We also have to look at racism, because to say implicit bias is just way too soft. We have to deal with covert and overt racism that has been displayed in actions and in language.
Preach. Amen. Amen.
I have a question for Professor Hansford. You were talking about the fact that there are portions of Missouri's use of force statute that are considered unconstitutional. And for now, not focusing on the statute as a whole, but just on the portions that you say are considered unconstitutional. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just enlighten us on your thoughts on that.
So here in Missouri, the excessive force statute says that an officer can use deadly force to